Inside Puchi's shrine, Huacheng, Lingwen, and Kong Yizhen sat around the little wooden altar table. Shilian brought a pot from the kitchen and set it on the table. He opened the cover to reveal dozens of cute, round, smooth, snow-white little meatballs sagely curled inside. "Weren't you stewing something? How did it turn into meatballs?" Kong Yizhen demanded. Shilian introduced his creation. "This dish is called Incorruptible Chastity Meatballs." "Weren't you stewing something? How did it turn into meatballs?" Kong Yizhen demanded. "Kneading meatballs requires delicate strength. Not too hard, not too light," Shilian continued his presentation. "That's why so much time went into these." "Weren't you stewing something? How did it turn into meatballs?" Kong Yizhen demanded. Since Kong Yizhen was so relentless, Shilian explained warmly. "It was originally more of a stew, you're right, but because there was a small mishap with time and controlling the fire, all the water boiled off, so I mixed in new ingredients and made meatballs instead." Hearing this, Lingwen praised him wholeheartedly. "Your Highness truly thinks outside the box. There is no one like you in all of history. I'm steeped in deep respect." "Please, that's too much praise," Shilian said. "It's not," Lingwen said. "At least, I certainly do believe there will never be another person in history able to create a dish called Incorruptible Chastity Meatballs." Shilian passed chopsticks around. Thank you. Everyone, please." Lingwen and Kong Yizhen took chopsticks with one hand, and at the same time, reached for the cold bun sitting at the edge of the table with the other. Only Huacheng reached for an Incorruptible Chastity meatball and popped it into his mouth. After a moment, he remarked, "Pretty good." Kong Yizhen's eyes widened at the sight. "A bit bland," Huacheng added. "Okay, duly noted," Shilian said. Kong Yizhen watched with wide eyes as the bandaged boy next to him ate several of the abnormally glistening meatballs and gave such sincere feedback. After some thought, he seemed to be persuaded and reached for his own meatball. Shilian maintained his smile. He smiled and watched Kong Yizhen swallow. He smiled as Kong Yizhen's face turned pale. He smiled as Kong Yizhen crumpled to the floor. What was it? Illustration? Shilian continued smiling as he asked, "Is something the matter?" "Probably ate too fast and choked," Huacheng advised. Lingwen grinned. All of a sudden, Shilian heard a familiar voice in his ear. "Guga." It wasn't Lang Ying's mumbling voice, nor was it the crisp and languid voice of Huacheng in his boyish form. It was the voice of the usual Huacheng, and he was speaking to Shilian through their private communication array. Shilian raised his lashes slightly. "What is it?" "Lingwen is cruel and cunning, heartless and merciless. Things might not end so easily now that you've brought her here." This was the first time Shilian had ever heard anyone make such comments about Lingwen. He thought for a moment, and then replied, "It seems to me she harbors some goodwill toward the Brocade Immortal. That much at least I believe is true. Harboring goodwill and being merciless don't conflict. She's the #1 civil god in the heavens. Her eyes and ears are everywhere, and her arms are far-reaching. Guga needs to guard against her seeking out helping hands." "General Pei?" Shilian asked. "Unlikely," Huacheng replied. "She certainly would have asked the water tyrant for his assistance in suppressing the matter if he were still around, as Shiwudu always acted on acquaintance and not reason. But Pei Ming might not be willing to aid corruption as long as you inform him of the truth. Guga, be careful." "All right, I'll be careful," Shilian said. "Good thing a day goes by fast." However, Huacheng's voice was dark in his ear. "No. Guga, you've misunderstood. I'm telling you to be careful of something else. We have visitors." The clinking, crisp sound of bells reached Shilian's ears. Huacheng frowned slightly. Shilian looked through the window and saw a middle-aged cultivator approaching the entrance to Puchi village and ringing a bell as he strutted forth. The cultivator wore a rather magnificent cultivation robe and carried a treasure chest on his back that was covered in yellow talisman. As he walked along, his bell rang with each step. Shilian recognized it as a good tool. He had an eye for these things. The sound of that bell would give a piercing headache to any low-level evil beings that were near enough to hear it, and they would steer clear. Before the cultivator got any closer to the shrine, he was joined by a few other large, white-browed, yellow-robed monks carrying staves in their hands, their gaits steady as they approached. Soon, a crowd of 50 or 60 had gathered, and Puchi Shrine was heavily surrounded. It was as if they had planned this meeting, and were unsurprised to see one another present. These people weren't just putting on a show. Their bodies were hung with spiritual weapons, and their forms were composed and obviously very skilled. Heavenly officials took spiritual power from their worshippers' offerings. Likewise, certain Taoist and Buddhist cultivators could request spiritual power from the heavenly officials they worshipped. And so the monks and cultivators gathered at the shrine might possess greater spiritual power than Shilian, a heavenly official. So many of them swarming outside all at once couldn't herald anything good. Shilian sensed that the newcomers didn't come in peace, and knitted his brows in concern. Huacheng put down his bowl and chopsticks and rose to his feet. Shilian heard his humph in their private communication array. These foul old monks and cultivators dared chase me all the way here. I'm sorry that I brought trouble to your door, Gaga. I'll even lead them away. Shilian grabbed him. Don't move. Lingwen was bewildered. What's going on? Shilian spoke to Huacheng through their private communication array. Don't go. Tell me honestly, is the reopening of Mount Tonglu affecting you greatly? No, Huacheng replied. Shilian stared intently at the eyes behind the bandages. Stop lying. You're a supreme ghost king. You don't need to be afraid of mortals like them. Why would you lead them away and not beat them away? You weren't just playing a prank when you changed into this form, were you? The stronger the nefarious creature, the more they felt Mount Tonglu's effects. Shilian had witnessed this with his own eyes, just how much misery Huacheng had suffered the first time the ghosts were agitated, and the tremors would only intensify as the gate's opening approached. If Shilian had been the one suffering such a thing, he would have chosen to temporarily seal his true form. To avoid going berserk and conserve his spiritual powers, he would transform into a small creature and wait it out until after the mountain had finally formally opened. That would be a way to avoid the torment of Mount Tonglu's aggravation, but because his powers were sealed, it gave others the opportunity to ambush him. Shilian cursed. Qirong, you! That night, Qirong had threatened to bring forth all the Taoists and Buddhist monks who had grievances with Huacheng, but Shilian was shocked to see that he hadn't been bluffing. Huacheng shook his head. Gaga, they're only targeting me. It'll be fine once I'm gone. Although I can't kill them with a single move in my current form, I can at least make them get lost. But Shilian threatened, if you leave now, don't ever come back to see me again. Your Highness? Huacheng cried, shocked. Huacheng was usually so flawlessly composed. He had helped Shilian so many times in the past, so now that Shilian finally had the chance to help him, how could he possibly allow Huacheng to leave all alone? Sit down. I'll go meet with them, Shilian said darkly. Collision opened his eyes with great difficulty. Is someone here? He asked in a daze. His voice was hoarse. Do you need me to beat them up? Shilian helped him close his eyes. Qiying, just keep lying there. Also, you can't beat up mortals. It'll cost you merits. Shilian pressed himself against the wooden door to listen for any movement outside. Some villagers who had just finished their work for the day were still out and about and hadn't yet gone home for dinner, and they were amazed to see so many Taoists and monks. What are the masters doing here? They asked. Are you here for Shi Dazhong? A murderous-looking monk put his hands together in prayer. Amitabha Buddha, benevolent donor. Are you aware that this place has been invaded by wicked creatures? What? The villagers were shocked. Wicked creatures? What kind of wicked creatures? A hell-raising ghost king, singular in his evil throughout the ages, another monk replied enigmatically. What should we do? The villagers exclaimed. The splendidly dressed cultivator had been the first to arrive, so he took it upon himself to announce their intent. Leave it to us. Today, we who walk the same path are gathered here for one reason. We have been blessed with the chance of a lifetime to capture that vile ghost. However, before he could rush the shrine, the village chief pulled him back. The cultivator glared at you. Who are you? What are you doing? Masters. The village chief laughed nervously. I'm the leader of this village. We're very thankful you're here. But to tell the truth, y'all look very expensive. We've come to defeat evil. Do you think we're here for a reward? The splendidly dressed cultivator said, offended. They tried to charge again, but the villagers stopped them once more. Although the monks and cultivators were growing irritated, they couldn't just shove themselves through. What now? They demanded with forced patience. The village head wrung his hands nervously. If it's free, then that's great. Our thanks to the masters for coming here to defeat evil with benevolent hearts. But it's just that all such work here in the village is taken care of by Shi Dazhong. It's hard on me as the village chief if the masters have come to steal Shi Dazhong's work. The band of monks and cultivators looked at each other in dismay. Shi Dazhong? They huddled around. Is there a well-known mighty Taoist school in the trade with the name of Shi? Don't think so. Either way, I've never heard of him. Probably some nobody. If we haven't heard of him, then he's not well known. So who cares? After their discussion, the splendidly dressed cultivator turned back around. The Shi Daozhong you speak of. Is he the one living in this place? Yeah, the villagers then shouted in the direction of Puchi Shrine. Shi Daozhong! Shi Daozhong, your peers are here! There's so many of them, are you home? A yellow-robed monk pressed his hands together in prayer. Amitabha Buddha. It doesn't matter if Shi Daozhong is here. That wicked creature is hiding in this house right now. The villagers were stunned. Huh? At that point, Shilian pushed the door open and leisurely strolled out. I'm here. What's going on, everyone? Daozhong, these eminent monks and cultivators are saying that in your house there's a ghost, the villagers stammered. Shilian smiled. Oh? You can tell. The crowd outside the shrine was shocked. It's true? What a quick confession of guilt! Shilian tossed the jar to them. That's right, there really is a ghost. The splendidly dressed cultivator caught the jar and was delighted at first, but his smile collapsed when he opened it. "A half maculage woman!" He tossed the jar back, looking very obviously displeased. "Don't pretend, my friend. A vulgar ghost like this isn't even at the level of a fierce. You know exactly what we're referring to." Shilian caught the jar, and could tell the man's throw wasn't weak. It was obvious that he had cultivated for many arduous years, and had considerable strength. "Dao Xiong, I can sense this cultivator's body is full to bursting with evil qi," a number of monks said to the splendidly dressed cultivator. "Could he be—" "I, heaven's eye, can determine such things with just one glance," the splendidly dressed cultivator stated. With a loud shout, he bit his finger and drew a line of blood down his forehead, and a moment later a third eye looked like it sprouted on his face. Shilian silently praised this demonstration of skill, and he leaned against the door to enjoy the show. The splendidly dressed cultivator glared at him for a moment with great concentration. "I knew it! There it is, ghost chi! Such sinister ghost chi! You did change your face after all! Ghost King!" Shilian was struck dumb. How could he, an esteemed and titled heavenly official, have ghost chi on him? He was just starting to think that this man might have some skill, so why was he spewing nonsense not a moment after? At this accusation, the 50 or 60 masters in the gathering looked like they were steeling themselves to face a great enemy. Each of them went into a fighting stance. These people are so annoying," Hua Cheng said to Shilian in their private communication array. "It's fine. It's not that bad. Just sit tight," Shilian replied. The splendidly dressed cultivator spoke up again a moment later, but he sounded doubtful. "That's not right." "What's not right?" the monks next to him asked. The splendidly dressed cultivator rubbed the blood mark on his forehead. "This is weird. When I look at this man, he's sometimes covered in ghost chi, sometimes glowing with spiritual light, and sometimes dull and colorless. This really is strange." "Huh? How can that be? Dao Xiong, can you handle this? If you can't, let us take over." "Yeah, how could it be so bizarre?" The splendidly dressed cultivator was miffed. "What? You think I can't do this? If I can't, do you think you can? Heavens, I have been in the trade for years and years, and I've rarely gotten anything wrong." Shilian rubbed his forehead and shook his head. "Then why don't you take another look and tell me which part of me has the strongest ghost chi?" he asked temperately. Heaven's Eye rubbed his forehead and studied him again for a moment. "Your lips," he firmly declared. And that is chapter 71.